Those who have worked at Disney World, what behind the scenes stories do you have that the public doesn't see? NSFW. As a character, you are supposed to throw up in your mask if you are sick. Taking it off is not an option. You cover one eye with your hand and raise the other arm in the air to alert maintenance that you are not well. Also, if there is another character, same as you cannot, under any circumstances, be seen with them. You also must take a course to match signature style for autographs. Does it count if it's a different amusement park? The one I worked at has one of those sudden drop rides. A co-worker found a single screw on the ground and they closed down the ride for days as they went over every inch of the ride. Turns out it was a screw that could have led to a seat opening and rider falling out if it hadn't been discovered. If you hear an announcement over the park-wide sound system looking for a specific person, it is something very important. Announcements like that have a chain of approval before Disney will allow the magic illusion to be broken. But it's not always bad news, like informing families of a death. I've done several park announcements to find someone to inform them an organ donation was matched. A medical courier was on their way to Orlando, and they needed to get to the hospital ASAP. I worked a cash register in Tomorrowland. A guy had a heart attack and died about 10 feet from me. I called it in as soon as I saw, but they already knew about it. I went on break shortly afterward and saw the family, literally behind the scenes, crying their eyes out. That never happens. Guests are never allowed behind the scenes, except when somebody dies, I guess. Really kind of heartbreaking. On a positive note, they all got lifetime passes. On our family trip to Disney World, I was leaning over a railing looking down into some water. A few unreachable feet below I spot a tiny, 1.5 feet to 2 feet, alligator. Being from Africa and relatively unfazed with a slightly sharp swimming lizard, thought nothing of it. I called my mother over and said, "Look, an alligator." How cool. Sweet Jesus, was this a mistake? Not 2 seconds later, ears everywhere man, a staff member was looking over the railing whispering on the radio. All hell broke loose in the most hushed professional way ever. We were escorted away on a golf cart and a huge section of the park was cordoned off. We were taken to a room where they were very apologetic for our negative experience and offered us a free day at the works. So we said a big thank you and took what was offered. In future I will be smuggling other small harmless creatures in for free stuff. I also got stuck on the Big Thunder Mountain ride in Paris. That was handled in a much more French way. Jesus de soleil blow smoke in face. TL. DR Disney World plus tiny alligator being all chill equals free stuff. A friend of mine told me that the rules for workers at the European Disneyland were so strict that they took to calling it Mauserschwitz. When management got wind of this, they were told that anyone found using that name again would be fired. Apparently it was only a couple of hours before they were calling it Duck Hall. Everyone in the call centers is given a stage name, so no two agents have the same name to the guests. Most. Yeah. Unique stage names I can remember: Cotton, Casper, Arizona, Lucinda. When you're in training they give you a selection of like 20 names to choose from, so you better hope you're one of the first ones to pick so you can get a normal name and not get stuck with Cotton FFS. I worked on the Great Movie Ride in Hollywood Studies for a while, and I can tell you all 22 minutes of your friendly tour guide speech is scripted to the very last letter. You get 3 days to learn your whole monologue, and all of the speech control stops goes of the actual ride, before going live as a tour guide. Most of those 3 days is spent in a room with your trainer reciting your script until you get every word right. If you accidentally say the word okay instead of alright, you start over from the beginning. Most tedious 3 days of my life. There's also one button on every car that, despite being really close to buttons, you have to touch all the time. If pushed, gets you fired immediately. Compulsory. I never worked for Disney, but a friend did. Disney security listens to all Disney radio channels at all times for any distress call or other issue that is relevant to security. My friend, we'll call him Daniel because that's his name, worked for Disney World in Florida once. He worked in one of the resorts. I'm not quite sure what his job actually was, but his radio call sign was Movie Runner. He was walking between resorts one night, and near a pool he was cornered by a mama bobcat. Usually not a huge deal because the bobcat will eventually realize the person is not a threat. But he radioed the resort to let them know that he was being cornered by a bobcat. Next radio transmission. Without missing a beat, Movie Runner. This is Disney Security Base. We understand you are being cornered by a bobcat. Please remain calm. We have 2 units approaching your location. ETA 2 minutes. Please acknowledge. Over. TL. Dr. Disney doesn't duck around with bobcats. Most likely get buried at this point, but I remember once I was leaving the park. You know how it gets ridiculously crowded at the exits when the park is shutting down. I got elbowed in nose. Got a bloody nose. All of a sudden the staff swooped in and took me to the underground tunnels, then to a golf cart that brought us to our car. Definitely a quick exit. Not an employee. But I have an interesting story about Disney. When I was 7, I went to Disney World. The 3rd night we were there, I rolled out of my bed and cut my forehead on the nightstand. My mom came over to comfort me, not knowing I was bleeding quite profusely. She turned the light on when I wouldn't stop crying. She said it looked like a murder had taken place. Paramedics were called and the room was swarming with what I can only assume were Disney employees. After I was evaluated and patched up, I was taken to the gift shop around 2 AM with my mom and an employee. I got to choose 3 toys at no cost to my family. It was pretty incredible to be in the completely abandoned gift shop and being told I could have anything. When we returned back to the room 25 minutes later, all the blood was cleaned up. Guardrails were put on my bed, and a large basket of candy and other sweets were left on a table. Disney doesn't play around with customer service. Just moved back from doing a Disney college program. If you see someone working at Disney has a name tag with their college on it, they are doing it also. I was an international rep, as are about 1/3 of the people living there. Adding to the orgy context, we learned that a lot of the American girls there liked foreign guys. The things that go on in the housing complexes are astonishing. So much 6. So many drugs. So much alcohol. Hell. Every Monday night us internationals have a Happy Mondays event, where we get in our country's teams and go to bars to play other countries' teams in drinking games. I know a guy who was goofy. He used to do coke all the time. It's like a typical college campus, except for complexes of people who all work for Disney. My best story is the day I was working and managed to give a girl who was a guest in the park that day my number, and met up with her that night and got up to stuff. I went on a Keys to the Kingdom tour once and got to go down into the utilidors. It smells like rotten ketchup down there in a lot of places. You only see the part they want you to see. 2. It's different outside of that small square block. Less clean. More smelly. So I hear. My sister works at the Magic Kingdom, but she did say the rotten ketchup smell was pretty prevalent throughout the utilidors. I used to work as a candy maker at Disneyland. The candy store was on Main Street and there's a little pot of vanilla scent with a fan behind it to waft vanilla scent out onto the street where people are walking by. Once I saw a huge rat by the trash compactor when I was taking out some cardboard. Another time I was written up by my manager for accidentally dropping like $1,000 worth of caramel apples because a feral cat came up and scared the crap out of me. TLDR. There's a cat and mouse turf war backstage and they lure you into the candy store with a pot of vanilla. My cousin worked at Disney in the 90s. I haven't heard a lot of his experience, but I have been told that the cable that Tinkerbell flies down to the castle on once snapped and she got a massive settlement. And Snow White gave him crabs. I need to talk to him more often. Interesting guy. I worked at Splash Mountain. Sometimes we had guests decide it was a great idea to hop out of the log because they didn't want to ride anymore. Well, we know about that. Every time. The ride is littered with motion sensors, pressure pads, the like. I have a photographic memory of the ride layout, and even I wouldn't be able to avoid being detected out of the log. The flashes don't happen very often. Actually, it's usually men with their shirts off. In this case, their ride photo is blanked out and they can't purchase it. We always had parents trying to sneak kids who didn't meet the height requirement. I do remember we had one family who kept trying for hours, thinking that the cast don't talk to each other about problematic parents. Ride evacuations were always interesting, but as long as you were strong and confident with the guests, they always listened. It's real important to walk them through what's going to happen and let them know you've done this more than enough times. I also teased them that they were going to get a backstage tour, but it was gonna be real brief, and as long as they didn't take pictures, they'd get a fast pass for their troubles. Every day was an event, but I loved every minute of it. I'm probably too late, but I was an intern once for Disney. Around Jan, May, August. The housing department does the purge. They will over-accept people into the program, knowing that they will terminate bad kids. The term bad kids is very vague. It can be anything between a kid whose roommate doesn't like them to an actual bad kid who is underage drinking. They really just look at the numbers and terminate interns where they please. Escape room employees. What is the stupidest thing a customer has done to escape? Once a group disassembled a portable AC unit hoping to find a key. There wasn't any key. From that moment, screwdriver were forbidden. But the best team I remember was the first team that ever played. We made a big, enormous, gigantic mistake. We forgot the entire detailed instructions inside the room. Right at the entrance on a table. They found it immediately. They started reading it. They clearly saw that every combination, every puzzle, every piece of history and every piece of furniture, but they didn't realize it was the complete walkthrough. And in some unknown way they failed to escape. I can answer this. One of our rooms has a bed in it with white sheets. There was this group who was in the room working on the last puzzle. A logic puzzle. There's a sheet of paper in the room that's full of facts about a murder that you're trying to solve. The group wasn't quite getting the puzzle, so I typed up the white sheet of paper in room 3 will be a lot of help. So the group runs into the room and starts tearing all the white sheets off the bed, and I type not the bed sheets, so they start pulling the pillows out of their sheets. I then reply the sheet you write on, and lo and behold they grab the room's marker and start drawing all over the bed sheets. They didn't escape. There was a very pregnant lady in the group. We asked her if she was at risk of going into labor at any time, but she said she was fine. We let her in. The entire group was getting upset because they weren't doing well. They were in the hardest room we have. It's always a big deal if you make it out. They kept asking me for the code they needed to escape, and I had to keep telling them I couldn't say what it was. They had to discover it. So pregnant lady took out the water bottle she had, turned around so she wasn't facing the camera, and poured some on the floor. She screamed that her water broke, and I needed to tell her the code so they could get out and go to the hospital. I guess she forgot we have cameras in several places in the room, and we saw exactly what she did. So I went into the room myself and explained that she was free to leave. I would just escort her out and the rest of the team could continue. She really thought that by having her water break, that was a free pass to get the escape code. Edit, a word. We played through this demonic themed escape room, and the guy running it would speak as the voice of Vade through the PA system. He'd give us hints when we asked for them and would narrate story bits when appropriate. At one point there's a little fountain that pours out holy water. There's a little bottle to collect the holy water, but they only trigger the fountain enough for us to get a little holy water in the bottle. Then we're supposed to figure out we need to drip some holy water into a small hole in a box. Instead we tried dousing the holy water on just about everything else in the room. Nothing's working. Then my girlfriend's brother says, "Oh, maybe we have to drink it." And he chugs the rest of the holy water. The voice of Vade jumps in and says, "Do not waste the holy water." I run a tech camp thing for junior high aged kids and we have them do an escape room puzzle. Basically the box in the middle of the table has 5 locks. One for each puzzle. That has its own colored ring attached to it. Once you solve a combination, you bring the ring to the game master and you get the next puzzle. Simple enough, right? Never have I seen anybody do this in the 2 years we have done this puzzle for both kids and teachers. But one kid this year managed to unsnap a ring from one of the locks and picked every single one of them and got the box open without solving a single puzzle. I have both hosted games and managed escape rooms. I have seen it all. People who cheat and bring in tools. People who physically break objects and play dumb when confronted. Yelling matches. People on drugs. But the worst are the bad parents. The dumbest people were always the dads or moms of large families who took over the games from their children and didn't let them play or ignored them. Sometimes kids were just left unsupervised while mom and dad played alone. Guess they couldn't get a babysitter, but most of the time some really smart kids could see things the adults did not, and sure enough mom and dad ignored their input and got stuck overthinking everything. It was so satisfying to go in after they had lost and tell the parents they should have listened to the kids. The smiles from the kids made it so worth it and the parents couldn't do anything but pout. My friend thought the key was in this small wooden box and ended up getting mad and smashing it. There was no key. Just employees telling us to leave. Ho ho. Time to turn the tables. The stupidest thing I've ever seen in an escape room. The final challenge lock was a locked cabinet, consisting of a coiled up bicycle lock. The problem was that the bicycle lock was basically just a big 3-foot loop, and they'd only run it through the handles of the cabinet once. So there was more than enough slack to simply open the cabinet. Within the first 5 minutes of the game, somebody in our group just walked up, opened the cabinet, and we were out. My friend runs a place with 4 escape rooms. One guy got frustrated in the last chamber and just started messing with wall panels, assuming they were all hidden doors. He ended up pushing one and finding that it seemed to have a little bit of give to it. It was definitely not a hidden door. He went straight through it and put a very large hole in the wall. My friend and I had plans that night and he flaked on me because he had to fix the wall. Duck the guy that broke through it. The room had electronic components, so there were electric wires that were tied down but looped around the room. One Friday night, someone tried licking them, just in case. We created an escape room for our library, and one of the decorative props was a potted plant, and proceeded to pull the entire plant out, roots and all. There was dirt all over the floor and the poor plant was in shambles. In their defense, the theme of the room was Harry Potter, so they probably were thinking it was a man rake, in which case they should have used fuzzy pink earmuffs. Thankfully the plant was needing to be repotted anyway, so my co-workers and I split it up and took them home. My little piece is doing great. Not a customer, but a burglar broke into our escape room to rob it and got trapped inside. Saw it on Reddit. Not quite. The burglar broke in, saw the rooms, in particular one that looks like a serial killer's hideout with a dead body. He panicked and called 911 from the lobby. AskTechnica.com. Obligatory, not an employee, but many months ago my friends and I did an escape room. It was a King Arthur style room, and at one point you get a sword by lining up a group of statues. You were supposed to stick the sword in this device in the center of the room. However, we were having so much fun swinging it around we didn't realize that. Not an employee but a player. I was working a puzzle on my own on one side of the room, and this tiki torch looking thing keeps falling down while I'm working on something else. I keep picking back up so it's not in the way. Finally I get frustrated and slam it into this wooden stand with a hole in it. It makes a loud bang and part of the stand comes off. I think I've ducking broken it and quickly put the piece back into place and go back to my puzzle. Of course it was supposed to open, and there was a clue inside. We failed the room. I don't know how reliable this is, but my friend said that he once saw a guy bring a hammer in and just start breaking sheet when his group couldn't figure it out. Not an employee. But I often ask employees about any odd rules they have. This one room part of the goal was to identify the murderer. Also relevant as the story location was Tokyo. There was a Bluetooth lock on one of the doors. And so there was also a phone. It being a murder, the escapees thought to call 911. The staff was smart enough to remove the SIM card. But didn't realize you can always call 911. So they connect to the real emergency services. The operator gets a call that they think is a legit emergency and the escapees assume that it connect to the game master. Everyone was very confused when they said there was a murder in Tokyo and the operator says that's on another continent. Why are you calling me? I went to one last year and the organizers were giving us the rules beforehand. Including things like don't pull up the carpet. Don't dismantle any electric devices etc. We were laughing that people would even think of doing that and then they told us that wasn't the worst of it. The rooms were in an old tenement building with fireplaces. Apparently one guy in the past was positive there was a clue hidden behind the old boarded up fireplace, so he managed to break through and climb up the shaft all before staff could intervene. They had to call the fire brigade cause the guy got lost in the maze of shafts. Was going through one and my girlfriend brute forced a 4-number padlock in about 3 tries. What I've been told by my room operator friends. Don't brute force the padlocks. You'll take the puzzles in the wrong order, which will be confusing as hell, and the operator isn't going to fix that for you because you had to go and brute force a padlock. This one was a 6 padlock thing that could be done in any order for that portion, so it was alright. TBH, she was the only reason we finished. We had like 6 minutes left when we finished. Worked a zombie themed escape room within a haunted house where you had to find the cure before your time ran out and you became a zombie. On part of the haunted house is a locker room type deal and you have to walk through the stalls to open up into the room itself. Girl finds the cure in a toilet tank. Gets so excited she football spikes the tank lid. Lid of course shatters. And we get less than 5 minutes of reset to clean up her mess before the next group comes in and shreds themselves to ribbons. Good times. The first time I did an escape room. The setup was that this little girl had died and was haunting her old bedroom. The guy giving us instructions literally had to tell us, if you happen to have a knife on you, please do not stab the bed. Apparently a former patron had ripped the mattress open with a switchblade to look for clues. Not an employee but went as a group. One of the guys in my group only had one hand. The other ends halfway from his elbow to his wrist. The scenario starts with everyone being handcuffed to a bench. Obviously he couldn't be completely handcuffed. So while everyone else was solving how to get out of the handcuffs, he used his nub to solve other portions he could reach. Such as a locked desk. Not an employee but my brother thought if we hit a locked desk hard enough it would open and give us a key. Not an escape room employee but I have friends who are. The best story I ever heard was of a group who were chained to a radiator in a saw-like fashion. Instead of getting the key to the cuffs, the group disassembled the radiator somehow. They hit the emergency button 15 minutes later saying that the water is running awfully high. To which the operator replied, "What water?" My girlfriend used to act in an escape room and it was the worst job ever. She played a zombie chained to a wall in one room and her makeup was very realistic. I actually went through it when she was acting before we started dating, but people would treat her like a not real person. She was punched several times, hit with thrown objects, and someone said to her face that he wanted to titty duck the zombie. People act dumb as hell in escape rooms. There are a pair of footstools in one of our rooms that we mention in our intros are there for you to sit on or use as a table. And that there are no clues in them, so please don't take them apart looking for clues. I began adding the phrase "we can't afford another set" as a joke the first time we had to replace them from someone not listening. I now say we can't afford a 5th set. I can flip this one. There was a giant box with a key hanging from a hook inside. And a stick long enough to go into the box and remove the key. I tried. But the key dropped to the floor. So I used the stick to knock out all from under the box. And it skated under a dresser that was bolted to the ground. We couldn't get it out. Couldn't move the dresser. Stick wouldn't fit. So we called for help. Employees spent 10 minutes trying to get it. Finally gave up. Didn't give us extra time or tell us what the key went to. Obviously didn't escape. And after reading everyone else's response, I'm convinced our escape rooms are shit. Not our employee but went with my cousin and his GF. His GF had a idiot friend and her giant of a dumbus boyfriend. Spent 20 minutes trying to get out of the first jail cells because it was split into boys and girls. We asked them what was in there and they said nothing. Apparently they didn't think a broom which could reach the key just out of reach was useful. We failed hard. I'm on my office's party planner committee and a while back we considered going to an escape room for an office party. My coworker casually let it slip that he was no longer welcome at the escape rooms in our greater metropolitan area. Turns out he kept taking doors off the hinges and breaking them because no one said it was against the rules. Not stupid in the conventional way. But I worked at an escape room location that had 4 rooms. One of which had 2 rooms in one room and we would laugh when a group picks that room. Well, a coworker and I were told to do it by our manager. And it took us an hour and a half to get out. Keep in mind the time limit is 1 hour and we actually knew what to do and still couldn't finish it. It just didn't make sense to us to have that room available but people still chose it nevertheless. Not an employee but we were doing an escape room where they split you up into 2 groups and the groups are in different rooms and they need to communicate with each other with walkie-talkies. The other group picked a lock to open a box and gave us a code they found in the box, which made us completely skip one section of the room. Miso and I once went to our escape room. In the first room we completed it and moved into the second room where we found a bucket of mystery keys. After spending a majority of our allocated time trying to figure out what these keys are for, I went for a Hail Mary and tried them on the final door lock. It unlocks and I stick my head out like there are still all of the puzzles in the room which we haven't even touched and we're out. I turned to Miso and said I think they left the room keys in here. She agreed. We both agreed to finish the room legitimately and at the end of it all the woman from the front desk came to congratulate us. We then asked what's with the bucket of stuff and mystery keys. Turn out she had left everything to Rosita room in that bucket including all the keys. 10 out of 10 would cheat at her escape room again. Not an employee but the only escape room I did was myself, my fiance, and most of his close family, 10 plus people, and basically right at the end we were supposed to throw bean bags at a carnival style game and we just were standing there arguing about it and what we needed to do next. Our game master, out of nowhere, just goes throw the damn bean bags. We still made it out in time though. I'm not an employee but a few months ago, my sister, her boyfriend, her boyfriend's brother, and I were at an escape room that had demonic and supernatural themes, where we were paranormal investigators, when a bookcase suddenly opened to reveal a hidden second room. My sister grabbed the prop salt and brought it in with her, ready to make a circle just in case. The employees were very impressed with how in character we were,